the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. 10 years ago this weekend, Cincinnati was under curfew in an effort to gain control over the riots, civil disturbances, that erupted in the aftermath of the shooting of Timothy Thomas by a Cincinnati police officer. It would be easy to start this show this morning with dramatic images of those days, but a community is not defined by the tragedies it experiences, but by the quality of the sustained response to those situations. 10 years out, our region is long past the first, often frantic efforts to respond. What we see today are the second and third generation initiatives that often find their roots in those agonizing days a decade ago. The evolution of one set of responses was unveiled this past Thursday at the annual United Way Leaders and Legends Luncheon under the title Bold Goals for 2020, a collaborative approach to community. To talk about the bold goals, I am joined this morning by the leadership of the United Way of Greater Cincinnati. Rob Reifsnyder is the president of the United Way, and Father Michael Graham is the chair of the Board of Trustees of the United Way, and also the president of Xavier University. Both of you, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Good to be here. Thank you.
These really are an extension of the work that this community's been about really for over a decade, but certainly in an intensive way. And how do you see, what's the overall arching purpose of these?
The overarching purpose, Dan, I think, is to both business, government, health, education organizations in the work of the community that we're all trying to do to help children get prepared for kindergarten, to help students and youth achieve success on their way to high school graduation, to help college students attain either an associate's degree or greater, and the same in helping people be employed and so on. But it's to involve and inspire the community to work on goals that we all care about.
In addition to that, I think that Rob's absolutely right that part of what the whole Bold Goals is about is getting everybody to align behind these important goals. Right. But as well, it's to drive a stake into the ground in outcomes in terms of health and jobs and education, that if we achieve those and the goals were chosen to be ambitious but achievable, then we'll absolutely move the community forward in very good ways.
Yeah, I think that alignment point, and if people look at these and you go to your website, the United Way website, for example, and so many things that we've been trying to work towards in the last decade. It's really about alignment. It's about getting everybody moving in the same direction.
Partnerships.
That's right.
Right. I mean, everybody wants to respond, but if everybody responds on their own, we're going in a million directions.
That's right.
Let's talk about a few of the specifics of these. You really outlined the three basic areas you were sort of starting, and we've got some things we can put up here, but it's education.
Right. Income and health.
Okay.
So.
And those are reflected in a lot of other places. They immediately looked familiar to me from anybody who's familiar with Agenda 360, Vision 2015.
That's right.
These are things we've been talking about. So as you were putting these together, was there a competing fourth category, or is these the categories that you feel like we've been working on?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to know that education, income, and health don't cover everything that the community could set a bold goal around. There could be bold goals around the arts, the environment, specifically economic development. So education and income and health are the arenas of United Way's work, but Agenda 360 has education, income, and health goals. Vision 2015, the Strive Education Partnership is deeply focused on the education piece. And what we were finding is that these collaboratives and others were generally working more effectively to align our work. I think that's one of the lessons out of the events of 10 years ago, that we are really working hard to align our work. But we hadn't aligned our goals, so that some of these organizations had set 5-year goals in this or 3-year goals in that. Others some were measuring on getting from X to Y by a certain date. Others were saying, let's exceed our peer community averages over the coming 5 years. So if what gets measured gets done is accurate, and if we really want to align, we not only have to align the work, but align toward very specific and agreed upon goals.
Stake in the ground idea.
Yeah,
Let's take a look at the education.
Sure.
Education is one of these areas that has been a priority for United Way, and here's what we're looking at. What your bold goals are. 85% of the children will be prepared for kindergarten readiness.
That's right.
85% will graduate from high school and prepared for college or a career, and 45% of adults will have associate degrees or higher. Father Graham, where do we stand now? Let's start at the last one of those, that 45 degrees, 45%. Where are we now, and what do we have to get to by 2020?
My recollection off the top of my head is it's somewhere between 5 and 7% lower than that currently.
It's actually about 35%,
right, okay,
and
great.
It has been 35% for most of the last decade.
So we haven't moved it very far.
So we haven't moved
But
it.
nor have there been strategies that have been specifically designed to achieve that. And so that's, again, part of the whole process behind the drawing up of these bold goals is to set that stake in the ground such that people who are providers or supportive agencies and so on know what it is they're driving towards.
And one of the things about that particular goal, the associate's degree and higher, relating it to the indicators report that was issued at the late last year, comparing us to other metropolitan areas, we are significantly lower on that category than other communities that we want to compare ourselves to.
Exactly right. Exactly right. One of the things that we fear here in the Cincinnati community, I think, is a sort of a brain drain, if you will. You know, our educated people going away, and clearly, if you look at where the jobs are going to be in the future, they're going to require some advanced credentialing beyond a high school or degree or a GED. Of a variety of kinds. And so what we need to do is elaborate a number of strategies, I think, to allow people to get to that so as to be successful.
Does that mean Xavier University, University of Cincinnati, Cincinnati State have to work together in a different way? I
think so. I think so. Ultimately, it's about all the kind of post-secondary educational providers figuring out what each of them does, where each plays, who has what kind of strategies that seem to be successful that could be imported into other places and the like. So it really has to do with, I think, all of us pulling together around goals that are important for the region, and then making sure that whatever we do with retention at Xavier that seems to be successful could be adapted by other schools and the like. So that we all have to be in collaboration and conversation much more than we've been in the past.
That whole area of kindergarten readiness is extremely important because of the growth of the human mind
gray
early
matter,
on.
right?
It's all there, but we've talked about that a lot in other situations. I want to get to some of the others. Let's take a look at the income goal. Rob, the income goal by 2020 is that at least 90% of the labor force will be gainfully employed. Now, I don't quite know how to read that because it could also sound, are we talking about we'll accept 10% unemployment?
It's not specifically the unemployment rate, because the unemployment rate right now is about 10%. So you could say, well, we're not trying to make any progress. Gainful employment is about generally fuller employment than we have today. Right now there are many people in that percent employed number that are underemployed. They're not in full-time jobs. They're not making what's required to really sustain their lives. So this is about getting more full employment for 90% of the population. And while that's not acceptable any more than 85% of our children being prepared for kindergarten, we have to aspire to 100%. These are 10-year goals, and they are ambitious goals at that, so we recognize the aspiration.
Well, actually, one of the things I like about that particular goal, and I think it's actually fed through all of these, is they are aspirational goals, they're bold goals, but they seem sensible and realistic. I think some of the earlier plans have been, everybody's going to be employed at above above the poverty, going to be earning more than poverty, and it's like, no, we can't. We can't be out of line with the entire country. That's ridiculous.
We had more than 36 partners sitting around the tables on the education, income, and health goals. And they were very, very specifically charged with, and they took this seriously, we need these goals to be aspirational. They need to be stretch goals, but they need to be in the realm of possibility, because we're going to be trying to align a lot of partners, and if you set goals that you don't think you can even reach, it doesn't work for
Well, I
positive
think it sounds
motivation.
empty. It sounds hollow when you announce them.
People realize it immediately that this is just not going to happen, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, right, and I think these are very different. Let's take a. I'm running out of time, so let's take a look at that last area, and that's the health area. And for the health goals, we've got a number of them. 90% of the community will report having a usual place for medical care, medical home is the way that term's being used. And 70% of the community will be having excellent or very good health. In the aging population, and we're going to get older, I just received my Medicare card this week. Is that realistic?
I think so. I think that the thing that makes it difficult, of course, is that the whole healthcare environment is also shifting under our feet while we're doing this. I would say that in many ways, this is the least developed of the areas of the work that United Way has done. That we've gotten a lot of good traction around education, especially on the early end of the pipeline. And what we need to do, I think, to really help drive the healthcare piece is get the right people around the table in an ongoing way, very organized around what the supporting mechanisms are for delivering on these things. So we'll get there, but I think we're a couple of steps behind.
Okay. That's a big overview. Find more on the United Way website. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for working on this. Stay tuned. After the break, we reach deeper into Xavier University. I'll be joined by the director of the Center for the Study of the American Dream to discuss the results of their second annual national survey. Thank you. Welcome back. 2.5 years ago, Xavier University established the Center for the Study of the American Dream. Last year, the center conducted a nationwide poll to establish a baseline of popular attitudes. 10 days ago, the center released the results of its second annual study. The study is based on 1,003 telephone interviews with adults 18 and over, selected nationwide through random digit dialing. The center also conducted 300 additional interviews with first and second generation immigrants. The margin of error for the total survey is plus or minus 3.1%. To discuss the results of this survey and what they tell us about the state of the American dream, I'm joined by Mike Ford, the founding director of the Center for the Study of the American Dream. Mike, welcome back.
Good to be here, Dan.
You were here just about a year ago when the first study was released, and this gives you a point, that gave you a point of reference. Let's just begin. We have some of the numbers. I'm going to tell people how to find the entire poll here at the end, but the condition of the dream itself seems to be pretty strong, despite everything.
Yes, it's definitely strong among individuals. Individual Americans, I think astonishingly high percentage, 63%, still believe with confidence that they will or have achieved part of the dream. This is while everything is collapsing around them. Individuals are holding on to the dream, particularly, by the way, those immigrants that you talked about.
And we'll get to the immigrants here in a minute. People do see obstacles, which isn't surprising in the current situation, and we've got a slate that shows some of the statistics on obstacles. But what are what do people see as blocking their access to the dream or their achievement of the dream?
Well, there's two different answers, one for themselves and the other for their children or grandchildren. For themselves, the economic situation, the loss of 8 million jobs, worries about financial security, having your home mortgage underwater, and so on. Those are natural things that you'd expect. But in terms of their children, this surprised me. The number one obstacle in their mind, for their children's sake, is the failure of public leadership. The second thing was problems in education. That was the way it was phrased.
Yeah.
So neither of them really have anything to do with the economy. It's about leadership and it's about education. That's what they're worried about for their kids and their grandkids.
One of the subgroups that I mentioned that you did this sort of over-surveyed and to get an additional group of immigrants in this above the random sample, the immigrants that showed up in the random sample. Immigrants' connection to the American dream and their trust in the American dream is particularly high. Now, as a historian, I'm not particularly surprised at that. That's the whole point why immigrants come. But it is true, though, right? That's what you're finding.
It is true, but I agree with your historical perspective. However, at the same time, we have to realistically say that the resistance to immigrants has been very public and very uncomfortable in various parts of the country. So while you're right, we'd expect immigrants to have a higher expectation, and they do, in every respect. Right track, wrong track, every respect, they have a better outlook than native-born Americans. But the number that surprised me in this context was that 60% of the American public, apart from immigrants, still believe that immigration is important to keeping the dream alive. And I think that's a high number, given all of the adversity that immigrants have seen, the laws that popped up in places like Arizona and elsewhere, the resentment, the sense that immigrants are here to take advantage of government handouts, didn't show up to the degree that I thought it would. So you're right. You'd expect immigrants to have a higher expectation. They do, of the dream and of themselves. But the country still feels their need.
Well, you know, again, because it's just, we've got some numbers up here. Immigrants in the American dream commitment, overall population 31%, immigrants 42%, Latinos 47%.
Right.
You know, this opposition to immigration, although it's particularly strong and, you know, can be looked at from a lot of different ways. As a historian, that's not unique to our day either. I mean, the anti-immigrant sentiment has ebbed and flowed. I mean, in this city, it was against the Irish, and in the
much to our regret.
Yeah, right. In the mid-19th century, and in other places, it's been focused on other people. So, again, if you take the big view of this, but what strikes me about that is it's that immigrant spirit that keeps fertilizing the American dream, and it's so darn important. And we can lose track of that sometimes.
That's right.
And all the other stuff. Let's talk, though, about the really tough stuff here. Falling trust in institutions. And you referenced this before, and we've got some numbers, and it really is worth looking at. And the big institutions are the ones that are falling. They're politics. This is over, the question was phrased over the last 15 years, right?
10 to 15 years.
10 to 15 years. Down 58%. Corporations, 51%. Government, 50%. I mean, basically, falling off the edge.
Well, I combine numbers and actually have politics at 83. I have corporations and big business at 79. I think government was 78. But you leave out the media, which was at 72.
I always leave out the media.
The
we
point
have no confidence.
It's collapsing. Here's the interesting analogy. Think about this. While individuals still believe in themselves, their families, their neighbors, the old idea that it takes a village to raise a child is converting into it takes a village to ruin the dream, because all those institutions are the village. They are supposedly safeguarding the dream, and the American people have lost faith and trust in them for that purpose. So now it's about taking care of my family. I'm not expecting the government to do anything. I'm not expecting big business to do anything. And I don't know what the media is saying. All I know is I've got to take care of my family. And that was by far the #1 description of the American dream, which is new from last year.
What part of that's new? What are you saying?
I'm saying that there were 4 basic descriptions of the dream. And while they still exist, the priorities have changed. They've been shifted. And building a good life for my family was at 4. Now it's far and away at 1.
Okay. So this collapse in public life, in the public space, has really emerged clearly.
I would just add that you're right, but it's also true that financial institutions have really lowered that business trust level. Considering what Americans have gone through with the hits in their 401ks, with the loss of the value of their homes, they have a lot of skepticism about particularly the financial industry.
The financial sector.
Yes.
On the flip side of that, there are some institutions that people feel their opinions of, their trust in, has been rising over the last 10 or 15 years. And we can take a look at that on this. We can take a look at the figures. The military, up 33%. Churches and religious institutions, up 23%. What's that tell you?
Well, I was surprised at these numbers. Again, when you add them all together, the military comes out at 60. And the churches...
Those are different categories of...
Extremely, somewhat, and so on. Faith-based institutions registered a 44, which is a positive number at least. But the military was far and away the most trusted institution in the country, which surprised me, but it's the case.
Which indicates a huge turnaround from a generation ago. And when you and I were in college, that would not have been where the military would have come out.
Correct.
So this indicates a real change in attitudes in American life. I
agree, big time.
Another thing, and as I will say before, I'll let people know how to find all of this. There's just so much in this survey. But the place of the United States in the world was really, again, a fascinating set of numbers that we've got some things to show on that. Here, it's in decline. In 2010, 58%. 2011, 65%. Strongest claim to the future, China with 52%. And, people who believe China is already either much more or somewhat more powerful than the United States. I mean, that last one just blows me away.
Well, it blows me away too. And one of the reasons it blows me away is perhaps a reflection on skepticism about media. Not you, of course.
No, of course not.
But the fact is that China is 1/3 the size of our economy. Their economy is even though they're 4 times the population. So there is this almost irrational fear as opposed to irrational exuberance. And the numbers just don't hold up in that sense. Down the road, we don't know what's going to happen. If we lose our confidence, who knows what will happen. But our place in the world, the American people believe that we are less looked up to, that we are not creating the future. That last year was the one number that blew me away more than anything. A bare majority believed that it would be created elsewhere. This year, that's increased by almost 6% who believe the future is being created elsewhere. And far and away, the assumption is that it will be China.
Why do you think that flip in a year? I mean, is it just the continuing drag of the economy and the job situation? Is it just people have gotten, even though those numbers are pointing up a little bit, but it's always marginal, why? That's a big change. That's a big downturn.
It is, but I think the news is incessant that China is advancing faster, they graduate more engineers, China this, China that. China holds our treasuries. So that is battering people's psyche to the extent that they are buying it. They just surpassed Japan.
Right.
And obviously Japan is up against it right now.
Right.
But only 10% think the future's coming out of Japan. European Union, 15%. China, 52%. So we're second in their expectation. We're in the 30s.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of other elements of this survey, and compared to the baseline survey of last year, and I want to make sure that people do have a chance to see it. You can find the website at xavier.edu/American Dream. xavier.edu/American Dream. Mike, thank you for being here again this year.
It's a pleasure to be here anytime.
And this is really fascinating stuff.
We'll keep watching for you.
Yeah, okay, and we'll keep watching for year 3?
Year 3.
Year 3. Okay, thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women shaping our world for the future. Have a good week.